Hello and welcome back to True Crime Guys Podcast. But this is no ordinary episode of True Crime Guys Podcast. This is episode 3 of the Freeloader series. If you don't know what a freeloader is someone who takes things without paying for them, just uses things at will. You know what I mean? Like for instance, if you weren't a freeloader, you could have heard this episode 2 years ago on patreon.com/truecrimeguys, where we're adding a new premium episode every month. Okay? But if not, that's cool too. Hey, leave a review and check out this old gem from back in the day. So without further ado, this is Gary Ridgeway, the Green River Killer, episode 3. See you later, you freeloaders. This episode of True Crime Guys originally aired July 8th, 2017.
You ready to do this? We got the most prolific serial killer in American history is our case this week.
This was a tough one to tackle.
Play it down a little bit, you know? It's no big deal.
No big deal.
Just the guy that killed more people on record and got convicted of more people
than any
in history
serial killer
in
ever.
America. Not to say he killed more, not necessarily, because Randy Kraft potentially was up there. We don't know how many Ted Bundy really killed.
Right.
A lot of these guys, you just don't know the real number, but convicted for, this guy's number 1.
He is.
Ichiban.
Boom.
Numero uno.
The
big cheese.
The big. Okay, going with that. The Great Gambino of murder.
No, you know what? Dahmer would be the big cheese because he was up in Wisconsin.
Oh yeah, he would definitely.
So this
be the
guy's
big
like
cheese.
the Great Bambino. I don't know.
The Great Bambino of murder. I like that one.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Right here in our neighborhood, this little boy grew up to become one of the most notorious killers, not only in this country, but I think in this world.
And you did things to those women before you strangled them.
I had sex with them, that's all.
It would be important for us to know, but you chose not to share that information with
because there is nothing to share. I could count to 60 and they're dead. They died slow because I was choking them.
You're a coward. You choked them from behind. You choked young, innocent women.
Your statement begins as follows. I killed the 48 women listed in the state's second amended information. I killed so many women, I have a hard time keeping them straight. I picked prostitutes as my victims because I thought I could kill as many of them as I wanted without getting caught. Is that true?
Yes.
And Mr. Ridgeway, is it your desire to plead guilty to the 48 charges of aggravated murder in the first degree because you believe that you are guilty of each of those offenses?
Yes.
He's gonna go to hell, and that's where he belongs.
When the families could get up and speak their mind, and some were angry and some forgave him.
You've made it difficult to live up to what I believe, and that is what God says to do, and that's to forgive. And he doesn't say to forgive just certain people. He says to forgive all. So you are forgiven, sir.
You're a loser, you're a coward, you're a nobody, you're an animal. I'm angry, I will always be angry. I will never have that closure. I will never have my sister back in my life. You broke my family apart for 20 years. I hope you rot in hell. Son of a bitch. Son of a bitch. Son of a bitch.
All right, so our case this week is none other than the Green River Killer, Gary Ridgeway.
Most prolific serial killer in history, right?
Yep. And he has my dad's name, which bums me out.
It's a popular name, dude. Don't get stressed about it.
But my dad's a good guy. And as far as I know, he's
My
never
name's
strangled
Mike.
any females.
Get over it.
I don't think he strangled one.
You don't think so?
Not even one.
Not even your mom on an experimental night?
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I wouldn't
put
want,
that thought in your head.
at the same time, I wouldn't want to know. She never mentioned it. There was never any dinner conversation about it, so it's just...
No, that's weird.
No.
Never came up once. Okay.
Right. Now, one thing I have to announce right now is that my head is spinning from studying this case because, as we mentioned, he did kill on record more than any other women in American history. Or not just women, just people.
Right.
We've had a lot of gay serial killers that have killed a lot of men.
There's no easy way to wrap your head around this.
It's not.
It's like his personal life, his jobs, the women he was truly dating, the murders.
It's hard to follow. Ooh. And like I've mentioned before, when you go through different sources, you just see discrepancies. You see one date on one, and you see another date on the other.
Right.
And you hear this on one, and it's like on one. On so many sources I read, it said that when he went into the Navy,
right,
he was in Vietnam. But I just think that the people said that to give him combat experience. Like it just
right.
It's like the telephone game,
right?
It's like the telephone game. I think a lot of times some of these websites like Murderpedia and stuff, they go and they look at one thing and then they like embellish it a little bit. It's like he's in Vietnam where he saw combat.
Oh, what'd you say? He dated Shaka Khan?
Right. Exactly.
No, I get what you're saying though.
Right.
But it's more like the Philippines, right?
But really, yeah, I truly believe because I read a book by the detective that like chased him for 20 years and he said that he was stationed in the Philippines.
How was that book? My experience, book by detectives are fucking hard to listen to.
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot of cop talk. It was a lot of detectives he worked with.
A lot of straight, emotionless details. It's hard for me to get into.
Yeah,
those.
and they rail off details like you wouldn't believe. And it's like, how am I supposed to follow this?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
descriptions, what was found at crime scenes,
and it's a lot
where they were found.
Yeah, it's a lot of information. You're trying to decide whether you need it or not for like telling the story.
Right, in under 2 hours, hopefully.
Right, exactly. It's like, man, how much of this do I write down? But it gives you also a sense for their frustrations and like all of the lengths that they went to try and catch this guy. Because a lot of the public at the time in Washington were upset, saying that the police weren't doing a good enough job. They were saying that if these victims were victims of police officers, like if they were the daughters of a police officer, that the killer would have found already. But when you hear Dave Reichert, the book that I read was "Chasing the Devil: My 20-Year Quest to Capture the Green River."
Okay.
Dave Reichert was the lead detective on it. He ended up becoming sheriff later on.
Right.
But yeah, he was the first one to find the initial bodies, which we'll get to.
Okay.
And then he was the lead of the task force that got disbanded multiple occasions. But he was always the head guy behind the investigation, trying to find the Green River Killer.
Okay. Right. So you mentioned that book.
Right.
What was the title of it again?
Chasing the Devil. Chasing the Devil: My 20-Year Quest to Capture the Green River Killer.
Okay, I'll plug mine right quick. I did Green River Running Red, the real story of the Green River Killer by Anne
Rule.
Anne Rule. Jesus.
Right. Famous true crime author. You all know her.
Never heard of her.
Right.
All right. So yeah, that was the two books we read. That's not all we did, obviously, but.
Yeah, I mean, we watched as many documentaries as you can watch on YouTube.
Which is a shit ton.
Right. Jesus. The Cold Case Files version. And
that one's pretty good.
You listen to podcasts here and there. Actually, I didn't, but I think you listened to...
I listened to a couple of them, yeah.
Yeah. Did you like their takes?
I did. I just noticed that everybody struggled with the structure of the story, which made me really nervous.
We may as well. We'll see.
Yeah, that really made me nervous. Some people took up to as many as 4 parts to do this. Like they would divide up the different sections of his life and things like that.
We're doing it in one take. We're going to see how it goes.
One take, boom.
Well, no, who knows how long it'll be. Could be here for a long time.
Yeah,
you already know if you're listening to this. You can look
2 hours.
You can look at
max.
What it says. All right. Well, let's get into it then.
All right,
We'll quit wasting time.
All right.
Gary Leon Ridgeway was born February 18th, 1949. Shared a birthday with 2 great men, John Travolta and Dr. Dre. D.R.E.
Man, again, another undeserving candidate for that birthday pool.
Well, he was great at what he did. So is John Travolta and Dr. Dre.
Okay, yeah, he made the Hall of Fame of murdering.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, at least he's not like some half-assed serial killer that they're in the company of.
But could he dance or rap?
I seriously doubt it. He looked like a goofy-ass white dude.
You are right.
He could dance.
You are right.
I'd like to see him dance. It would be pathetic. That's all I'm saying. Of all the serial killers, Ridgeway probably the worst
You don't think
dancer.
he invented his own dance called the Ridgeway? I kind of
No.
like That's kind of catchy.
The Ridgeway.
That's kind of catchy. Dude, are you doing the Ridgeway?
I imagine him on his tippy toes.
Fuck yeah, it's all the rage.
Yeah.
On his tippy toes. All right.
All right. He also has 2 brothers, Gregory and Thomas. He was the middle child. Makes a lot of sense.
Does it?
Yeah, you can picture like Ridgeway in the middle.
Just not getting
have his
any
own
attention
sitcom.
with his squinty eyes.
Right.
It's creepy.
He did have squinty ass eyes, didn't he?
Did,
It's like
man.
he was trying to see some faraway land.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, or he was trying to poop. It's like my son when he's trying to poop. You get that same like squinty.
Yeah, that's different though.
Right.
Yeah.
The family moved to SeaTac, Washington when Gary was 11 years old. This was 1960. SeaTac is just south of Seattle. You'll hear more about SeaTac. You know, that's where a lot of the bodies are found. Was in that area.
Right.
His mother was a clean freak and domineering. His mother is like...
His mother's name was Mary, by the way.
His mother's name was Mary, and his father's name was Thomas.
She was a clean freak and domineering, which is... It's strange because like he had such a love-hate relationship with his mother. You know, even at a young age. Because Gary had one of the main things, bedwetting.
Right. We got a lot of details about his mother because she was just... an interesting figure in his life growing up, and you have to wonder if it had a lot to do with his development.
Right.
She loved to garden, which was one of the more normal things about her, but she also dressed in tight clothes, wore excessive makeup. She once smashed a plate over Gary's father's head,
right,
Thomas, and I guess he was a very meager man. He just kind of like took it and just walked away.
Have you ever seen Shameless?
Yes. Love that show.
I think he's the guy that, you know, in the first season... Mm-hmm. That Frank has an affair with that. Well, not an affair, but he's with that woman that can't go outside.
And the daughter's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's her
both
husband.
Women just walk all over him.
It's her husband that left.
The one that, like, do you know what happened to him, right?
Not yet. Don't tell me.
Okay.
That's Gary Ridgway's dad.
Okay.
I really don't approve of what you're doing in here.
If you don't watch Shameless, then you're totally lost.
And I'm taking all my clowns. If you don't watch Shameless, check it out. It's freaking awesome.
Great. If you like our show, you like Shameless for sure.
I think so.
As you had mentioned, Gary was a bedwetter during his teen years, his early teen years, and his mother would make a big deal of it. She would like freaking put on a display for his brothers and like
almost try to embarrass him into not wetting the bed anymore.
Yeah, and she would also excessively wash his genitals afterwards.
Yeah, he actually kind of liked that. I think this is where he first found out that like, hey, this feels kind of good.
Yeah, and he started to have like feelings of, he had like sexual tension toward his mother. He would spy on her. He would watch her like sunbathe.
Kind of a Norman Bates thing going on.
Yeah, and she didn't help because she would also talk about like measuring men's trousers at the department store that she worked.
Yeah,
and like kind of getting off on it.
Oh, she was out there peacocking.
Yeah. Oh,
for
yeah.
Sure. Yeah,
for sure. She would also belittle him for his bad grades. She would threaten to send him to school for the mentally retarded if he didn't get better grades.
Jeez,
I know, right?
Which is,
I feel like the mother is supposed to be like the nurturing side, you know, and like she's just being just.
Well, she's a little bit of tough love. She's School of Hard Knocks over here.
You can say that.
She's trying to.
You can say that.
Trying to motivate him through embarrassment to be better. You know how that works out.
Uh-huh.
People never become vengeful for that.
No, they definitely don't go on to strangle women.
No,
later on, there's no way she could have seen that
Name one case.
Right. He would begin to fantasize about killing his mother, but also lusted for her. So, like you said, very Norman Bates type thing going on here.
Well, he killed a lot of people he lusted for. So that makes sense.
It's true. It was more lust than kill, however. Not kill then lust.
Right.
Well, no, not always, because he would kill and then lust as well.
Yeah.
So it was lust, kill, lust.
Lust, kill, lust, if we're being picky here.
Yes. His father drove the city bus and would often complain about prostitutes getting onto his bus and...
Yeah, I think this is planting seeds in little Gary's mind here.
Most likely. I mean, because he did grow on to have a hatred for prostitutes later on and almost acted as though he was doing the police a favor by getting rid of them.
Right, which is
weird. And you wonder, like, where did this hatred come from? It was probably an accumulation of things, but part of it must have been from his father coming home and talking about them and being angry at them for...
It installed this belief that they were a lower life form of some sort.
Yeah. His father also told a story of working in a mortuary and witnessing a man having sex with a body, planting more seeds in little Gary's head, I'm sure, because he brought it up later, which means he must have kept it in his head and thought about it.
Yeah, he was probably like, Dad, does it bring your kid to work day yet?
You got to be careful. I feel like with young men, when you're, like, you got a young son, like, the things you bring up around them, like, while they're developing they're like going through puberty and developing their sexual tendencies, it's like you start talking about sex with dead bodies, Dahmer.
Next thing you know, you got a little necrophiliac there.
Yeah,
is that what you're saying, Lauren?
Yeah.
Oh,
he went to the
a child psychiatrist now.
He went to the Hogwarts of necrophilia from his father talking about it.
Okay. Old Dumbledore Ridgeway over there.
Somewhere in his early teens, Gary began torturing animals. He loved to kill birds and also killed the family cat. Pretty creepy story where he took the family cat and put it into like a metal ice chest
Yeah.
And then like put it in an area of the property where no one could hear it.
Damn.
And then came back the next day and the cat was dead.
Now I know
And then he had sex with it. No, I'm just kidding.
He had some. I know he had some animal cruelty in his past, but I didn't know specifically. I didn't hear about the cat thing.
Yeah,
That's
he put it
crazy.
he put it in a metal chest where no one could hear it, and then came back the next day and it was dead.
Yeah, he just wanted to come back and look at it
I guess so, man. He just wanted to
to
kill
see
it.
what happened.
Right, but he didn't have the balls to actually like do any like kill it directly. He put
Right.
it in a chest and walked away. That's pretty cowardly.
Gosh,
But he
that
was a
is-
cowardly man, as we know.
He was.
Another common theme with serial killers early on, he liked to set fires. I wonder what that connection is between arson and future serial killers.
Like,
Like,
to see things
they're
burn,
so-
bro. Fire is the ultimate killer, I think,
It's the ultimate like fuck you to society, maybe.
because fire can pretty much engulf almost
Devastation.
anything if it gets
Right.
hot enough.
I just don't see the correlation between killing a human being and setting a fire.
But a
I
fire,
just don't get it.
I don't know. Maybe a fire gives off a powerful feeling.
Yeah.
Like because I mean, fire. Like I said, fire is like fuck you
Fire.
to whatever it comes up against.
Yeah. I still don't get it. He claims that he may have killed a boy while swimming in a lake in the early 60s. This would have been when he was in his early teenage years. He says he wrapped his legs around a boy in a lake and drowned him, and then he left the body underneath a dock. Now he doesn't know. This was like during interviews after he'd been caught and everything, and he still didn't seem like he was sure that it happened. He said it may have been a dream that he had had, but at the same time it could have been real life, because that was a lot of his killings in general. He didn't remember, we'll get into it, but like he didn't remember half the names of these girls, their faces. It was just
No.
he was impulsive.
Oh,
so this very easily, or in his early teens, could have been something that he actually did. And they looked up the early 60s, they looked up the lake and they found that like a teenage boy and like a young child had been killed in this lake, but they didn't, they had no evidence to prove
At the same
it was
time?
during the time that he said it happened.
Okay.
Around that time. So but they weren't able to really say definitively that it was Gary that did it.
Right.
They could have just drowned in the lake.
Absolutely. Happens a lot.
Exactly. So not only that, and then in 1964, when he was 16 years old,
This is crazy.
Yeah, he lured a young 6-year-old boy who was dressed in a cowboy outfit, which I feel like made it even worse. Like it's just that much sadder.
It's like a scene
that this
from
kid
a
was
movie.
like, because that's like I used to wear cowboy boots and a cowboy hat. I could picture
Hell yeah,
like
didn't
little
we all?
6-year-old me.
Yeah.
And then you get 16-year-old Gary Ridgeway
Walking around. Yeehaw!
lures this boy into the woods and stabbed him, and basically said that he wanted to see what it was like to kill someone.
That's it.
He stabbed the boy, left
Yeah.
him in the woods, walked away, and basically thought that he had killed the boy. The kid, luckily, the kid had survived.
And he said later that he was not worried at all about the kid dying. He was
Right.
only worried about possibly getting caught. That's what kept him up for a couple nights.
Yep.
Then he was back to normal.
Sounds like Gary Ridgway.
Yeah.
He still had. I still don't think he ever had any remorse.
No. No, he said in one of the interviews, in one of the detectives later, they're like, is there anything missing from you that are in other humans? And he was like, probably that caring thing. That's exactly his words, that caring thing. It's crazy, huh?
In high school, girls that he was interested in that wouldn't date him, he would stalk.
Oh, yeah, obviously.
The developmental shit is just like it's all there for
It's
him.
a lot like Robert
early on.
Hansen.
Yeah.
A lot of ways.
Yeah.
He really was.
I mean, but Gary was still like, it's not like he was like Hansen. He had, the bad acne and
Yeah.
Gary was like not a bad looking teenage kid. And like there was a girl that
Yeah.
went to high school with him that I saw an interview with. I'm sure you watched the same thing on YouTube.
Yeah.
The girl that was in school with him, and she had a crush on him. And
Oh,
like,
yeah,
And
yeah.
it wasn't uncommon for girls to like Gary at the time. He was kind of quiet kid, he's
right.
good looking kid, whatever. And he was like friendly as well. Like there was a story that the girl told of him picking up some other girl's books and walking her home when she dropped her books and this and that.
What a gentleman.
But then there was also red flags. Like at a school dance, the girl that was talking about going to school with him, her brother got into an altercation with Gary in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And they had some words, and the boy turned around and Gary pissed on his leg in the bathroom. And it's just like, what makes you do that?
Right.
Like that's just not like a thing that a normal dude thinks to do. I guess I had some friends.
Did he
that
get the
probably
shit beat out of him after that?
No, I don't think so.
That is grounds for getting the shit beat out of you.
right. You piss on my leg at a school dance, it's going down.
Yeah. Fucking spit in my direction. It's
I'm
going
gonna
down.
sock you and then rub my piss leg on your
Right.
face.
rub your own piss on your face.
Right.
Yeah, no, there's a younger picture of him. It's like a headshot. And you kind of get a gist. I would imagine this is probably, late 70s here. He's kind of got that hairstyle.
Yeah.
You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, he wasn't a bad-looking kid in high school at
dude.
all.
He's
Right.
probably in his, I don't know, mid-20s here.
The girl that I'm talking
20s.
about that did the interviews talking about him in school said that when he smiled, he had dimples and like he was a quiet kid, nice, and she had nothing but pretty much good things to say about him.
Yeah.
And a lot of the neighbors had the same thing later on.
Right.
The neighbors that he had said
We find that with like a lot of the serial
oh,
killers.
yeah. If you got a real
Everybody's
nice
an
neighbor,
angel.
keep a close eye on that motherfucker.
Everybody's-
If he's a dick talking about the hedges and stuff, he's probably not a serial killer.
He's taking his frustrations out on you verbally.
Right, exactly. He's angsty like the rest of us. But if he's like, hey, how you doing? It's like, look in that dude's basement.
Right?
He's taking all of his frustrations out on
Need
bodies.
some help with the weed eating? No, that's okay. It's okay, Norm.
Right.
I'm good over here.
Yeah, he's got a chloroform cloth behind his
Right.
back. He's helping you weed eat.
Here, you might want to wear one of these face masks I made you.
Right.
You know, for your allergies and such.
Yeah. When he was, and so like what I was talking about though, like he wasn't like completely undesirable in school.
right.
He had a girlfriend that he would end up going on to marry shortly outside of high school.
Yeah.
When he was in 1969, he would end up, to tell you shortly, basically, he was not a great student, to say the least. That's an understatement. He was a bad student. He was not the brightest bulb.
Right.
I don't know why I'm beating around the bush. He's fucking dumb. Like,
Well, I got some evidence that states that he might have been dyslexic and just never diagnosed.
you think so?
Yeah, he made a statement back when it was like elementary school when they're really starting to learn grammar and string sentences together.
Mm-hmm.
And he said like he would look at these sentences and the letters just didn't make sense. Like the train of letters did not make sense
Okay.
like it seemed to other kids. It's just the words that he used that made
Right.
me think maybe he was dyslexic.
Yeah.
At least slightly at certain times.
It's not completely uncommon for a serial killer to be dyslexic. It's happened. I'm pretty sure we've covered cases where the dude was dyslexic.
Probably.
Yeah.
I just find it funny that statement was made, and it corresponds with his early childhood and his reading in school and stuff. But yet no one ever threw this possible diagnosis out there.
Well, if that was the case, then it's unfortunate because he didn't end up graduating high school until he was 20 years old after being held back. I would say twice, right? He would have to have been held back. He would end up eventually graduating from Tyee High School, and at 20 years old, shortly after that, he would marry his high school girlfriend, Claudia King. This would be his first wife.
Claudia Craig, right?
Claudia Craig, my bad. Yeah, Claudia Craig. And that same year, when he was 20 years old, he was hired as an hourly employee at the truck maker Kenworth. Now, that's
probably a good job.
Yeah,
My
I mean,
dad
especially at the
worked
time
for
when you're
Freightliner
20.
a little bit growing up, and it was a really great job.
Yeah.
So and he had good success in his careers, though.
Well, he would come back to Kenworth. He was a kind of a temporary job just out of high school until he ended up signing up for the Navy in 1969, the same year. So he gets a temporary job at Kenworth, and then he enlists in the Navy, where he would eventually be stationed in the Philippines. And this began his infatuation with prostitutes. While in Philippines, it's actually on Navy record that he got gonorrhea while there from a prostitute.
Well, that's probably what set him off.
Which, he had it ingrained early on. His dad bad-mouthing about prostitutes, picking him up on his bus.
Gonorrhea.
And now he got gonorrhea from them. And this kind of further...
Hey, that's strike two.
Solidifies him.
Okay.
Right?
It's strike two.
So what's strike three then?
We'll wait and see.
Yeah. Yeah, and he returned home from his stint in the Philippines with the Navy to find that his wife, Claudia, had been cheating on him.
No.
Yeah, well, he's away. You're at home. It happens.
That's right. They're called Joeys.
Yeah.
The guys that move in on military people's significant others while they're away.
Fucking Joeys.
Fucking Joeys.
So while he's gone, he comes back. There's a Joey banging his wife. They get divorced. He's 22 years old when this goes down. Around this time, he's rehired by Kenworth, the trucking company that he'd worked for prior. He would end up staying there for 30 more years.
Wow, that's
all the way through all of these killings.
That's admirable.
It is. You know what? Say what
Why
you want
didn't
about
he
the guy.
retire there? Did he retire there?
I mean, 30 years. He must
Yeah,
have
he
had some
should
kind of
have.
a pension through Kenworth.
Hell yeah.
I wonder if he's getting paid out while he's in prison.
Yeah, let us know, Kenworth.
Right? Did they have some kind of clause? It's like, well, if you're strangling women, your whole retirement is flawed.
Right.
We can throw this out since you strangled.
There's a small clause in there in fine print.
Right.
If you happen to be a
The
serial
limit
killer,
of women strangled is 42. You surpassed that.
Sorry, sir. Surpassed that by at least a good
Your
7.
retirement is null and void. Stamp it. Done. Yeah, and when he was 24 years old in 1973, it wouldn't take long. He would remarry a woman named Marcia Laureen Winslow. And in 1975, he has a son with Marcia named Matthew. And it wouldn't take long for him to start resenting the boy because he was a very...
very high sex drive.
Yes. Whatever is going on, I don't know if it was testosterone.
Talking like 3 times a day.
3 times a day.
This dude's trying to be fed.
His wife's all kind of corroborated that. Collaborated. They all said that he was insatiable as far as sex goes. He had to have 2 to 3 times sex per day, and we know what he was doing, beyond that during certain years.
That's just from his wife.
Right.
He's an animal.
Yeah. And so he resented the son that came into his life because, as we all know, things slow down a bit for a little while when you have a kid.
Oh, is that what happens, Lauren?
Yeah, I'm a little tense. I was going to say.
All right, move on before we get too personal.
Yeah. During this time with his second wife, he becomes religious.
Oh, that's a good timing.
You could say fanatical.
It's good timing.
To a sense. It's said that he was reading the Bible aloud at work and at home. I even read some things that said he was going door to door. I don't see that. Could have been, though. You never know. He was insisting that his wife follow the strict teachings of the church pastor.
Yeah, she should.
Pastor says we need to have sex 3 times a day.
That's right. Obey your husband.
However, he was continuing to solicit the services of sex workers during his marriage.
Well, that's kind of contradicting in a way. Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. According to later interviews with Marcia, she said that he would also take her to Green River locations.
Oh.
He loved to have sex outdoors. We know this.
Yeah. And they would look at the logs passing by in the river and talk about how they look like bodies.
Yeah, it was cute.
That's cute.
You picture candlelit dinner along the
Look at that
riverside.
one. Looks like a prostitute.
Yeah.
Does it? I didn't notice.
Right?
How about a spot up here?
Let's go a little further up. This may be a little too personal, this location. Him and Marcia would end up splitting up, and Marcia would start dating another man. Now, they didn't get divorced officially, but this is around 1980. She's dating another man.
Right.
Around this time, Gary was arrested near SeaTac Airport for attempting to choke a prostitute.
Yeah. This is the one he claimed bit him, right?
Yeah, so he got off on self-defense because he claimed that she had bit him on the penis during oral sex.
Right. But that's not what happened.
No,
I don't think that's what
a lot of like the girls that survived. I think there was 2 of them. That went on to later talk about it.
Right.
They said that he would get angry out of nowhere. Like they would go to have sex. The negotiations would happen. They'd say this much money. They would talk about what they're going to do, and then he would get to the location.
And he'd be like, "Why are you still alive?"
Right.
Yeah.
He would get angry out of nowhere. Why'd you bite me on the dick? She's like, "What are you talking about?"
That's it. I'm gonna have to choke you.
Yeah. So, yeah, and shortly after he gets let off for choking the prostitute.
Right.
Marcia, his wife, files a complaint with the Kent Police Department where she claimed that Ridgeway was harassing her over the phone about divorce papers and also said that he threatened her boyfriend's life. And not long after that, in May of 1981, he would get divorced from Marcia Winslow. Finally, I don't know what took her so long to get those divorce papers.
Right.
He later said that he wished he had killed his second wife, Marcia, and that if he had done so, that he may not have killed all of the women that he would later kill. I call bullshit as well. I don't think that. I think it would have, if anything, it would have just made him crave killing more.
Yeah. No. Because
that's the thing, man. Killing must be like there must be something to it because it seems like it only takes one. It seems like I'm just saying a blanket serial killer statement here.
Right.
It seems like you just got to get your feet wet a little bit, and then you start going. Like they always kill one, and they go like, once I killed that one, man, I just couldn't get enough.
That's right.
What I'm saying, Michael, is all we need to do is we just got to get our beak wet, kill one person,
and
then we'll be off and running. Yeah,
right. Okay.
It's like doing a podcast. You do one, and then it's all from there on. We've done how many now?
That's it.
Just gets easier. Each
just
episode
keeps getting easier. That's right. We become worse at staying on topic.
Right.
No. But the thing, he acts like that he has like this bar that he has to feel. It's like this bar of hatred towards women.
Right.
Like in a freaking like video game that you
It's
have to
gonna go
fill up.
down.
It's like
He really did.
Once it gets it full,
Yeah.
he thinks that he'll be done killing, I think, in his mind. And he thinks like that this wife, Marcia, would have filled the bar completely because he hated her so fucking much.
Right.
And that's not the reason.
No.
That's not the way his killing worked.
He really did think that life and killing was like video games because a lot of his motivation, I truly believe the number one motivation for killing prostitutes was getting his money back. I think he was a cheap.
Well, he
fuck.
was a
he did yard
frugal
sales.
son of a bitch.
He was. He did yard sales. That was a common thing he liked to do. He learned it from his father.
That's true.
His father did yard sales often. He loved the yard sale. He was frugal as shit.
Drove a very modest pickup.
I don't know how much he was making at Kentworth painting vehicles. At
He
Kentworth,
was balling at Kentworth.
At Kenworth, he wasn't just your standard truck painter. He did like the stripping, like with the little pieces of tape.
The
and,
pinstriping.
Like, pinstriping. He did
Yeah.
like flames and shit. I'm sure you could do some badass flames
I'm
on
sure.
your truck.
I'm sure. I don't think that's what he did, though.
No, he did. He did the
He did the pinstripe.
He did
Well, the
pinstripes.
straight pinstriping, the factory pinstriping.
No, he did decorative pinstripes.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
I saw an interview with one of his coworkers who was talking about it, and the guy was acting like he was impressed.
Well, hot damn.
Right.
Okay. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I forgot where we're going with this.
We're talking about how good he is at his job.
Video games.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
His main thing was getting the money back. He thought it was GTA. Like, you know how you pick up prostitutes, you pull up, you honk, pick them up.
You never fucking get all your money back from those prostitutes in
That's
GTA.
true. He got all his money back.
Where does it go?
He got all of his money back, though.
Where does it go, Lauren? That's what I need to know.
It's consumed with, I don't know, man.
It's not fair.
Some
I
of-
literally just paid you 2 seconds ago and punched you, and I do not get all my money back.
One punch
This
kill.
is weird. This is like, what did you do with it?
Right.
Like, is your you going direct deposit straight to the pimp? Like, what's going on here?
He does get his cut.
The pimp gets his cut.
He gets a virtual
So that's
cut.
where it's going.
He gets a virtual cut.
But there's a time jump there.
There is.
Okay, let's get back on topic.
All right.
We'll talk about this later.
As I said, no, truly, to be serious for a second, I really feel like, because we get a little goofier on the Patreon episodes.
I don't
We
believe
drink
so.
more. You know, there's some other things
I
going
don't know
on.
what you're talking about, but go ahead.
We do get goofy, but to say seriously, I think that was his number one motivation, was getting his money back from the prostitutes. He viewed them as lesser human beings,
Yeah.
or not even on par with subhumans, basically.
Yeah.
And so killing them wasn't that much of a sin in his eyes, and it was worth getting the money back.
He never gave a flat answer of why he killed
I
anybody.
don't know that
ever.
I honestly don't know, after all the studying I've done this week, many, many, many fucking hours of studying, I don't know that he really got off on killing. I think it was just a more convenient thing for him. I almost think he just wanted his cake and he wanted to eat it too. You know,
Okay, right.
he wanted to have the sex because he couldn't get enough sex. He was
Right.
just
But he also
freaking-
didn't want to compensate someone who he felt wasn't worthy of any of his money.
Exactly. He didn't want to contribute to the lifestyle that it's kind of sickened him seeing all these prostitutes down on what they called the Strip in downtown Seattle.
Right.
He thought that, like we mentioned later on, he would say that he thought he was doing the police a favor, cleaning up the city, this and that. He thought they were a stain on his city.
Yeah.
And so he didn't want to contribute, giving them money. He thought it was a win-win. Pay him, have sex with him, get what he wants out of that, kill him, get his money back. It's just like he had no conscience as far as the killing thing didn't bother him because he didn't view
Which
them.
is strange because like this is his main outlet for his anger and his sex is prostitutes, and then you're trying to get rid of them all.
Oh, no doubt. He was being a hypocrite for
It's
sure.
like
He
owning
didn't
a
realize-
funeral home and creating the cure for cancer.
Right.
You're killing your own self.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
Or it's like the medical system in America where we try to act like we're healing people, but then we're giving them terrible advice and giving them heart disease so that they come back.
Well, that's another podcast.
Yeah.
Altogether.
Yeah.
We just got deep as shit.
We're gonna give you advice as how to make yourself healthy, but then we want you to come back real soon.
Yeah, take all these vaccines.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's some L-statins for your heart disease. Yeah. Eat low fat.
that
That's
feel?
great.
How does that feel?
No fats. No red meats.
No.
Yeah. See you
Lots
soon.
of GMOs.
See you soon when you have a heart attack.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's bring this back into the light.
Yeah, let's do it. So after his divorce, his second divorce from Marsha Winslow, he would end up having custody of his son Matthew every other week, and he would end up using that to his advantage.
Oh, yeah,
it was
this was a real advantage.
He used his son a lot. We're just now getting to where he starts picking up prostitutes and killing them. We're getting to 1982. This is like we're getting to like
This is prime time.
Prime time's coming, and he's gonna pick up little tricks that he starts using to make prostitutes, sex workers feel more comfortable with him.
Like one of the main things was carrying a picture of his son in his wallet.
Yes.
So he was like, it seems so much more less threatening.
So one of the things he would do often is he would pull up near the Strip where the sex workers worked, and he would pull over and act as though his truck was either stalled or broken down, and make himself seem more harmless and vulnerable.
Which is very believable because he had a shitty pickup.
Right. Yeah, he did have old shitty pickups, like a 75 Dodge, and and then later had like this was the...
That's true. That's
70s.
not that old.
It's like...
That's like, yeah, that car's like 6 years old, Lauren.
Right. So he would pull over and he would act like, he was busy working on his truck, and then they would walk up to him, and then it would be more of a natural thing that happened. Just, oh, look, okay. I mean, I guess I could use a blowjob.
Why not?
And they would get in, and they would, if they asked him for his ID, he would happen to have his ID with a picture of his son.
Go and they're like, this is a picture of your son. Oh, is it?
Oh, look how
is
cute.
it, sweetheart?
You're
Let
such
me
a
see it.
sweetie.
Oh.
Yeah, and then when he would take him back to his house, he would make sure to show him his son's bedroom, things like that. There was even an instance where he brought his son along and went off into the woods with the girl, and then when he came back, the girl was no longer there.
His son was like, where's the girl? His dad was like, oh, she walked home.
She walked home. She's definitely not face down in the river.
No, definitely not, son. Don't go swimming in there.
Yeah. So around this time after his second divorce, he's picking up prostitutes more regularly. He's also dating girls from Parents Without Partners classes. So he's dating these girls. He's going out with prostitutes afterward.
Yeah.
His life is just a lot of new women coming into his life and then out of his life, whether he kills them or just breaks up with them from the Parents with Partners classes. In early 1982, he gets arrested for soliciting sex from an undercover police officer.
Oh, which was super popular at this time. This was like one of their main plans to infiltrate the sex business then. They had undercover Johns and undercover prostitutes.
Right.
Everybody was looking out for him, which is so crazy that they took him so long to find him with all that shit going on. Mm-hmm. And he didn't really change areas that much.
No. But there was just such an active time for, these prostitutes, they're dealing with a lot of Johns. He's just another one.
Okay.
That was his biggest advantage, is that he was just another dude.
But again, I feel
really
like
didn't draw attention to himself.
I feel like a lot of prostitutes probably went ignored during this time.
Oh, no doubt.
A lot of them were probably saying, "Hey, this guy, every time he picks up this girl in this truck, she don't come back."
Oh, a lot of girls reported getting picked up in this older pickups.
Yeah,
but a lot of Johns probably had older pickups.
Yeah, but a lot of girls weren't never coming back.
And also, Michael, the police didn't listen to the prostitutes very much.
Fair enough.
And they didn't believe them. They didn't take their word for it. And they also, a lot of times, looked at them as subhuman as well.
That's true.
And stains in the city.
Yeah, there was actually, the city was becoming quite divided at this time. Mm-hmm. Like, half the city was all like, just fucking find somebody. Like, we don't care. Or like, just find somebody. Like, just convict somebody. Make an arrest already. Make us feel safe again.
Because they had this, we're getting to it, but they would end up, shortly after what we're about to talk about, they would establish a task force, and they were using a lot of tax dollars to try and find this guy.
Yeah, I was about to say. And then the other side is like, are these prostitutes' lives even worth it?
Yeah.
Like, who gives a fuck?
Right.
Like, move on. Like, worry about normal shit. Like, come help me out with my fender bender.
Right.
Right? Take pictures of this shit.
Right, when ultimately these are human beings that are being killed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
they went down a path. Maybe they wanted to do it. I try not to look down on people's professions. If that's what they wanted to do, that's their own lives. They're still human beings.
Yeah, they have the right to do that. They're a human being. They're an adult.
Right.
That's what you want to do.
And it's the oldest profession in the world.
You're not hurting anybody.
Pretty much as soon as people started realizing they could get paid for sexual favors, they started doing it.
Yeah. What do you think the second oldest profession is?
Murder for hire, probably.
Oh, hitman.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Right.
Definitely.
And so we're all leading up to Gary's getting his feet wet into this whole thing with prostitution, and he starts killing. And on July 15th, 1982, children playing near Kent find a strangled body. It would end up being Wendy Coalfield, who's 16 years old. She was found in the Green River. Now, there are multiple Green Rivers I feel like I have to mention because I did Google Green River to get some more just facts on it.
Yeah.
There's a Green River that runs like through Utah and Wyoming and stuff.
Right.
That's the main Green River. This is a river in Washington mainly that runs down from like a little cove off the west coast, and it runs down through the western part of Washington.
Okay.
It is the Green River. It's a very winding river surrounded by trees. It's beautiful. That's where this would come from. He would end up being called the Green River after all these bodies got found. Now, shortly after the body of Wendy Coalfield, there would be another two bodies found near the river. This is about a month later on August 15th.
Right.
They were found by a fisherman who was going downstream. He found what he thought was dummies, and when he got out, he actually tipped over his raft trying to get closer.
Right, because the bodies were held underwater by rocks.
Yes, and he would actually find out that they were not dummies. They were not mannequins. They were real human bodies. They were two African-American girls that were dead and held down by rocks. Detective Dave Reichert, we've talked about him, and we'll talk more about him. He was assigned as the lead homicide investigator. He would show up and survey the riverbank where the two bodies were found, he and Detective Sue Peters, they would end up discovering another body just off the shore in some brush.
Yeah.
And this is where they start realizing this is a serious situation.
This is where they start to get a little overwhelmed. Like
Right.
in his interview, he's like, holy shit, we found the two bodies floating.
Right.
It's like right after we just found another body. Now we're up to 4 bodies within, weeks of
Right.
each other. It's like, it's crazy.
The cause of death would be determined to be strangulation. There was a ligature found around the neck of the one that was on the shore in the brush. There was fist-sized diamond-shaped rocks inside the vaginal cavity of 2 of the victims, and semen had found inside 2 of the victims as well. Now, these victims would end up being later determined to be Deborah Lynn Bonner, Marcia Faye Chapman, Charmaine Mills, which Opal Mills, her mother, has spoken a lot. You watch a lot of documentaries, and she's one of the people we talked about saying that the investigators didn't do enough, that if it was a police's daughter that they would have found him by now.
That's right.
Yeah. And you understand her frustration as a mother whose daughter was killed. And also one of the bodies was Cynthia Jean Hines.
Okay, real quick, you said that there were rocks found in the vaginal cavity. Like that did that become a signature thing? Because some articles I read that seemed like he did that more often, and then some were like, he kind of abandoned that
I didn't
idea.
hear about it a whole lot more after this initial thing.
That's what I thought. I thought that
some of them, the bodies were so. A lot of times they would find these bodies. We'll get into it further as we go on, but they would find them and they were so decomposed. He had killed them like years prior. A lot of times
that was the biggest setback. Is most of the time by the time they found these bodies, they were just bones.
We're in the Pacific Northwest. We're talking about.
They were literally naming them Bones 1, Bones 2.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like sometimes they would find in the book. By Reichert, he talked about how they found one body and like right where the pelvic bone was, where a vagina would be, there was a diamond-shaped rock. But they couldn't for sure say that it was in the vagina or if it was just below the body when the body was placed there. And then, so it was a lot of bodies they just couldn't. It was too late to even tell whether the rock had been placed there or not. Now this is where the hunt for a serial killer begins. They basically said that these all were young girls. They were prostitutes. As young as 15, 16 years old. Mm-hmm. They were all found strangled in the same location. 4 of them right around the same area. Right. These 5 ultimately when you factor in Cofield. 5 women.
These groupings became a regular thing for him.
Yeah, he would go from location to location. He would use it for a little while and then move on.
I think that was mostly just for his memory. Just so he could come back and know about, if he had these big groups of women, it was easier for him to remember.
Well, not only that, he was a necrophiliac, so he could come back and he could
come back and enjoy 5 or 6 murders or the memory of them.
Not only the memory, but enjoy what was left of their bodies.
Right.
It's gross, but it is what it is. Bundy did the same thing. A lot of serial killers did the same thing where they'd come back. Even we talked about I believe Randy Kraft would do the same thing, right? Some of those. Back in the freeway killers would do the same thing. They would revisit the bodies.
Right. Speaking of Bundy, he had his hands in this investigation quite a bit.
He did. We will talk more about Bundy in a bit. Police at this time are getting flooded with leads. They established a task force, and the task force, I believe, was 25 people deep, and it had 12 to 15,000 suspects quickly. Yeah. Within months, they had thousands of suspects.
Right. What they were trying to do is rate suspects as far as A, B, or C.
Right.
Like if they were very typical, like met everything that they were looking for, like they would be an A. People with lower arrest rates or whatever would be a B, and so on. But once all that was done, they come to like 12 to 15,000 suspects. That's crazy. Yeah, and
we talked about an FBI. We talked about an FBI profiler being involved in the Robert Hansen case that we did last week.
Yeah.
Now there would be another FBI profiler in this instance. That was brought in to try and get a grasp. The police could kind of get a grasp for what they were looking for.
He wasn't quite as good as the Robert Hansen profiler.
No, I mean a lot of this didn't turn out to be factual. So what the profiler said was the killer was probably an organized person since he took the time to properly weigh down the bodies before dumping them in the water. Now he wouldn't always do that though. He would get, he was sloppy in a lot of cases and just leave the bodies.
Sometimes he would just put them in brush and cover them up with like a little bit of here and there.
A couple trees here and there. The profiler also deduced that the killer must be confident since he reused the same location over and over and likely also to relive the murders, which was true. Yep. He thought the killer must be a long-standing local resident and possibly a fisherman or hunter since he seemed to be familiar with the remote areas where the bodies were being found. And that he also believed the killer had a strong interest in police or detective work. It's the thing with these profiles. A lot of times it's very blanket statements. It's stuff that's like it's kind of like duh. Like I'm sure the investigators already kind of like we pretty much thought that.
Absolutely.
Now, the police would initially suspect pimps and taxi drivers that were really familiar with the strip and start talking to them. They'd start
one
talking
in particular, taxi driver.
The big one that we got to talk about.
Gosh, we got to talk about this guy.
You can't talk about the Green River Killer without Melvin Foster's name coming up. He was a 63-year-old taxi driver that was really familiar with the strip. He became the focus of the Green River Killer investigation. The task force started focusing hard on this guy, and he brought it on himself.
Also an ex-convict, by the way.
He was. And he reached out to the task force to point his finger at a guy that he thought was the killer.
Right.
And ultimately, the task force goes,
wait a minute.
I don't know. We're thinking a little bit about the stuff you've said.
I think you're the killer.
Yeah. Because he had been mentioning how he knew 5 of the victims. And this is in September of 1982 that he had reached out. He said,
such a creep, man.
He said, I've never made it a secret that I've been acquainted with a few of them. Cab drivers meet the seedy side of life if you drive around town. Police thought that Foster fit the FBI psychological profile of the killer and put him under 24-hour surveillance for months and searched Foster's house in Lacey, Washington twice.
This guy thought he was the savior of prostitutes. Let's just be honest.
He did. He talked about bringing them in, feeding them.
He acted like he was taking in stray puppies.
Yeah.
And he was taking in prostitutes. He was like, oh, I'd give them a place to eat. I'd give them a place to stay. I'd feed them and, give them water. And I'm like,
give them water. I'd leave a bowl out on the floor
I would
for
leave
them.
a bowl. I would tie them to a longer lead each night.
Right.
No, but I mean, like, what were you getting, you fucking creep?
Right.
Like this, it's just weird, man. The whole thing, and then he would like speak in
parables.
parables.
We're not saying this because there aren't people out there that would help out people who need help. But if you watch interviews with the guy, you just get a feel that the guy, he was a creep.
He's in most documentaries on YouTube.
And he loved the attention that he was getting.
Yeah, he speaks in parables and shit. Like, he thinks he's like the ultimate wise prostitute savior.
He interjected himself, and that's one of the things the FBI profiler said was that the killer would most likely interject himself into the investigation, and this guy did.
You almost get the sense like he wanted to be wrongly convicted.
Yeah.
He wanted to be convicted.
He did, yeah. You do get the feel of that. And he
wanted the credit.
And he was soaking up the media attention. He would do interviews constantly with local media outlets. Yeah. Any time that the local news would come to him, he would do a long interview, and he was even going as far as to like threaten Dave Reichert, the lead investigator, threaten people on the task force.
Right.
And he becomes a big headache for them, and they really do think that he's the killer, and they're dedicating most of their task force to him for a period of time. They do a 7-hour search of his apartment.
Yeah, him and his I was just thinking about him and his stupid parables that he would say in these interviews.
Right.
I can just picture them like, "Are you the Green River Killer?" I might be. I might not.
Well, I'm not saying I'm not.
If a tree falls in the woods, what's Rome built in a day?
He's rolling a booger. He's rolling a booger. He's like Matthew McConaughey in those fucking Oldsmobile commercials.
Putting on his watch.
Right.
Jumping in his pool with his suit on.
Right.
Maybe.
Now, I partially blame this guy. I mean, the task force was off base. They did dedicate a lot of their efforts to this guy wrongfully. Right. But, I mean, you can't blame him because the guy was, like, leading them on, in a sense. Like
I said, guys, just check out his interviews. You will see where we're getting all this vibes from, because he just wanted to be him. It's like he was almost jealous that he wasn't the Green River Killer.
He might have killed a few of them.
He may have. He had killed him on his own. He was just mad that his number wasn't as high.
Right.
Maybe I could take credit for this.
Now, I think he was partially responsible for the task force being disbanded one of the times that they were disbanded, because they dedicated so much time and effort to this guy in 24-hour surveillance for months at a time and searches of his house and all this stuff. And they would end up being disbanded shortly after they kind of gave up on him, because they had done, I believe they had given him at least one polygraph test, which he had failed. Yeah. Which polygraphs,
polygraphs can be altered.
Yeah, I don't.
We talked about that.
I don't hold a lot of water with polygraphs, and later Gary Ridgeway would end up passing a polygraph test, and he says it was basically just from relaxing.
I've heard that the giver of the polygraph test can alter it
100%.
to make it say what they want to say. So a lot of times you're getting the belief of the polygraph test giver.
Right.
And
there's supposed to be a certain amount of controlled questions, and then it's a science. Not everybody that does it is an expert, for sure. Like, you can give a polygraph and have a little bit of training, but it's not going to be on the same par as a true expert of it. That's how I look at it.
Okay.
However, he did fail, which does point more suspicion in his direction. Anyways, they would waste a lot of time on this guy, and when they would eventually decide that he probably wasn't the killer, The task force would be shortly thereafter disbanded. Meanwhile, prostitutes continued disappearing from the Strip at an alarming rate. However, the bodies were not really surfacing during this time. A few examples. In October of 1982, Denise Bush would end up going to a store to retrieve some cigarettes and would never be seen again until her body was found in 1985.
Well, it's clear what happened there. She ran off with the cigarettes.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, a cigarette run, who needs some? And everybody pitched in money, and she was like, peace, bitches.
Peace, I'm out.
I just made rent for the month.
2 months later, 18-year-old Rebecca Marrero disappeared from the SeaTac Strip. Now, while these bodies are disappearing, on February 23rd, 1983, Gary Ridgeway is spotted by police in his 1975 Dodge pickup bike, and in the truck with him is Kelly McGinnis. She would end up disappearing not long after that, and her body has actually never been found. However, they assumed that she was later a victim of the Green River Killer.
Right.
It's just interesting to note that, he's seen in this parking lot. I believe it's like near a baseball field.
Right.
Police officer stops him, talks to him, makes a report of it. And
Right.
This is one of the things in their computer system that would stay on record, and it would help bring Gary Ridgway's name to the center later on when when their leads are exhausted. And
That's pretty much what they're doing here. They're just stockpiling a shit ton of evidence. A lot of it they don't even have the technology to use right now.
Now, the problem is, I feel like
DNA evidence as far as like semen and blood and things like that. Like they can't use any of that, but they're still taking it, which is kind of good. Kinda cool.
There's a thing that's going on during this time where he's almost outworking the police in that they spend so much time just uncovering bodies and discovering bodies that they don't have time to like investigate, especially when after their task force has been disbanded and they're down to one or two people.
You think they're overwhelmed with all the leads and things?
Dave Reichert said there's periods during this time in 1982 and 1983 that he's literally just uncovering bodies. He has no other time. Like it's like he'll get a call on his radio. It's like we found two more girls, near the Green River or down in SeaTac, wherever.
Yeah,
we found more bodies.
Right,
and he's there uncovering these bodies, and he's collecting evidence that would later end up saving the day and end up bringing down Gary almost 20 years later.
Right.
With the first four to five bodies we talked about in the beginning, he, recovered the semen and the DNA evidence that would end up being linked to Gary Ridgway later on.
Right.
But I think for a long time, Gary Ridgway he was producing so many bodies that the police couldn't keep up. And it was more about them just trying to collect as much evidence and
they're just trying to stockpile stuff for when he does stop. They're like, then we can look at all this.
They're overwhelmed. They're getting leads. They're getting nonstop phone calls with leads and like this person. And a lot of times people just want to interject themselves into something that's a big story. They're seeing it on the news. They're seeing it in the newspapers. And they go, oh, this one guy's weird. I'm going to call up and say he's the guy.
Exactly.
And
there were tons of women calling in on their husbands at this time. Yeah. Like if
it's just the shit they're dealing with.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, we got Gary Ridgway, who's just, he's a truck painter. He's divorced from one woman. He's with another woman. He's got a son from.
Right. How bad could he be?
From an outsider's perspective, he's just a dude.
Seems like a pretty typical dude.
He gets seen. He's gotten busted in a sting operation by police, trying to solicitate sex with a sex worker supposedly, and then he's seen in a truck with a girl who later ends up becoming missing, but they won't really start linking these things together for a while, and by then it'll be way too late. In April of 1983, Sandra Kay Gabbert was last seen by her friends. She was seen entering a pickup truck on the Strip. That same night, about 2 hours later, after Gabbert's friends noted her climbing in a truck, Cammie Kay Pastor, a 17-year-old prostitute, was last seen entering a green pickup truck with a camper on it. Now, the pimp, being concerned, I guess he just had a weird feeling. He would end up following the truck for a little while because he saw like what he thought was arguing going on in the truck.
Right.
And the truck would end up running a red light, and he wouldn't see Marie again.
Well, he should have ran it. He needs to get his priorities in order.
Right.
He's a fucking pimp. Like, what, he's worried about running a red light?
Exactly. 1 week later, he would notify the police that Marie had never returned, and fearing that the police would be of little help and not do anything about it because she was indeed a prostitute, He contacted Marie's father, and the two began looking for Marie on their own. He
must have really cared about this girl, man.
He must have. Yeah. He would end up taking Marie's father around, and they would look for the truck because the truck had distinct markings on it. It had a Bondo patch on the door.
Right.
And they would start just looking in the areas where the truck had been headed. And after some time searching, I guess they were about to give up, and they decided to go one down.
The damn truck.
They decided to go down one more road, and it would end up being the road where Gary Ridgway lives, and they found a truck that looked just like the truck that they had seen Marie in that night, and they would end up reporting this to the police. The police would actually follow up on it, and they would arrive at the home of a man named Gary Ridgway. Inside the home was Gary and his friend Dave Wells, and they would end up doing a little conversation, having a conversation with him. Gary obviously basically said he doesn't know what they're talking about. He wasn't with any girl.
Very calm demeanor, wasn't nervous.
Very calm, denies the whole thing. They did a cursory search of the property and found no trace of the woman. It wasn't like they didn't have any search warrants. They weren't going to go beyond that because they didn't have any evidence other than the word of a pimp who said that the truck looked like this guy's.
Exactly.
They explained to Marie's father that nothing appeared to be out of the ordinary. Marie's father accepted this because he was already suspicious of the pimp story to begin with.
Huh.
I'm sure his daughter
maybe the pimp was involved, do you think?
Who knows?
Father probably. I'm sure he wasn't happy with the whole situation in general, being a father.
Yeah, Marie's body would end up not being found until 2003.
Wow.
Yeah. Gary now at this time is one of many suspects. Nothing, as we mentioned, really sticks out about him. Bodies are being found all over King County during 1983. On May 8th of 1983, the body of Carol Ann Christensen is found. Now, this one was a little weird. It was almost as if the killer was taunting the police. Her head was covered with a brown paper bag, and when the bag was removed, a fish sat arranged on her neck. They would end up taking DNA, and
weren't her hands folded on a bottle of wine as well?
I do believe, yeah.
And this is where they realized that he's probably coming back. Mm-hmm. It's almost like he's setting her up for a bottle of wine, like he's going to come and drink that wine later and be with the body. Yeah.
Well, by the end of 1983, 14 bodies had been found, and 23 more were missing or presumed dead. A new task force was formed, so they realized, we probably should start trying again to find the killer because the killer has not stopped.
Right. So maybe we should ump our ante.
Right. Prostitutes do matter, and when we're finding bodies all over our rivers, it's not a good look. Let's get that task force going again.
Yep.
And let's focus on somebody other than the same taxi driver the whole time, and maybe expand our efforts a little bit more.
Right.
There's different clusters now. They're getting further from the Green River. They're finding clusters south of the Green River in Star Lake. There were 4 bodies found. In October of 1984, a letter came into the police station from a cell on death row in Florida, and the sender was none other than Ted Bundy. Theodore Robert Bundy was the sender.
No.
He was offering his advice.
Never heard of him.
He had nothing better to do. He's sitting on death row, trying to buy himself time.
Yeah, trying to still be useful and in the spotlight. I think he was also worried that old Gary was going to break his records.
What's funny is that who would end up receiving this letter was Robert Keppel, which was a guy who actually helped take Bundy down and would eventually end up helping to take down what Bundy was calling the Riverman, which is the Green River Killer.
Trying to make his own nickname.
Yeah, Robert Keppel was on the Green River Task Force at the time. Bundy suggested that the killer knew his victims, probably even befriending them before he lured them to their deaths. Wrong, buddy. He's wrong.
Yep, did not befriend them at all. I could see him thinking he's all wise and shit, sitting in the
you can
corner of
listen
his
to the
cell on a
interviews.
stool, legs crossed, cigarette in hand under some low light.
You can actually look up the audio and hear the interview.
Befriended the killers. No, actually, he didn't. He killed them pretty quickly. Oh, well.
Yeah, he really didn't even remember their names or their faces.
He must have been really personal right away. No, not really. He didn't even know their names.
He wasn't wrong on everything, though. According to Robert Keppel's book, The Riverman, Bundy suggested that the killer likely disposed of even more bodies where they found the more recent bodies. So, and he also suggested that maybe they stake out a cluster that
was
they
good
find.
Advice.
Oh, absolutely.
That was very good advice.
He suggested that they quietly stake out a spot where they found bodies.
Right,
and
but they had to be fresher bodies. That was the only problem with this advice.
But much like the FBI profiler at the same time, they kind of knew these things. Like they had tried to do a stakeout early on with the initial.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
They tried to do it with the first 5 bodies that they found. They tried to stake it out, and they had some like unmarked cars that were near where the bodies were, hoping that the killer would come back. However, local news, like media outlet, like had a helicopter and came over and like spotted the cars and completely blew their cover. So it's easier said than done to stake out these sites because the media is all over this shit.
Yeah, they knew that, Ted. Thanks.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, like I think it was funny how in the book I read, Ann wrote, like it wasn't addressed that Bundy's idea had already been done. I was thinking that when I heard that, I was like, didn't they already try that? Like why all of a sudden, because it comes from Ted Bundy, it's a good idea again? Right. Like, oh, let's try it again.
One thing Bundy also suggested was that the disposal pattern of the bodies may be leading closer to the killer's home.
What? Like he's running low on gas. He's drive as far.
He's making a trail of bodies right to his front door.
This guy works.
The last body was actually discovered in his front yard.
Oh, wow. Just little breadcrumbs, literally.
Exactly. Now, it's interesting, though. I mean, it is kind of, I guess they, in their book, like Keppel and Dave Riker, they really had nothing to lose from going down to Florida and discussing these things with Bundy, because if anything, they can get more insight into Bundy's pattern of thinking. And the way Riker described it, he's like, any police investigator would give their right arm to have an interview with a guy like Bundy, because they can't. He says, like Riker, he's like, I don't know how a guy like that thinks. Like normal people don't think like serial killers. Right. And so to be able to sit down and have an interview and like talk about what goes through the mind of a serial killer when they're doing their acts, it's invaluable information. And so like they took him up on it. They went down to Florida. They had sit downs and they recorded conversations. You can actually look them up and listen.
That's
to
worth
them.
listening to. The way Bundy talks about it, he talks about it like it's like a normal trade, like bricklaying or something. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. The way he talks about it, it's just a totally normal thing for him, like a trade that he has
funny
mastered.
is that he was pretty much in denial of the fact that he was a necrophiliac himself and went back and visited his bodies.
Even though he gave them the idea that Gary Ridgway would do that.
Right. It's like, where'd you get that idea, buddy? Where'd you get that idea, Ted?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I wouldn't do that, but
someone
that's
like
more the
me might have. This guy I know might have done that.
This guy, I'm asking for a friend.
Right. Between October and December of 1984, 2 more bodies would be found and identified as Mary Sue Bello, 25 years old, and Martina Authori, 18. They were discovered. Both bodies were found off Highway 410. The total body count had climbed to 31. In 1984 alone, 14 bodies had been discovered.
Wow.
And so, I mean, you're just dealing with a crisis here. And I'm sure they're grasping at anything they can, which is probably why they went and talked to Bundy, because they're just like, we've got to get this shit under control.
Tensions are rising. Yeah. People are feeling unsafe.
Now, we head into 1985 now, and in February of 1985, Gary would meet his newest fling, Judith Mawson. Would end up being more than a fling, though. She had been fresh off of a 19-year marriage when she met Gary at a singles event in a Seattle country western bar.
I hear Seattle really likes country western music. Like in the Northwest, they really like it up there. They really appreciate it.
Really?
Yeah, because they don't get it as much, I guess, or didn't get it growing up. So they really appreciate good country western up there.
Yeah, well, that's one thing that Gary and Judith would have in common. They would meet at this bar and hit it off, and they would begin dating. On March 10th, 1985, the body of Carrie Royce is discovered. She was only 15 years old. She disappeared during the summer of 1983. In 1986, the case involving the disappearance of Mary Malvar resurfaced. This is in March of 83 that she had gone up missing. This is the one where the pimp had tried to follow her, and they had ended up interviewing Gary Ridgway on it.
Right.
At the time, in 1986, the police still had no strong leads on this case. They acquired a new computer system that made the task of cataloging and tracking a massive quantity of evidence and suspects much easier.
Which is pretty crazy.
Now, one of the documentaries I watched, they had been storing, like early on in the investigation, like 82, 83, they'd been storing all this data.
Absolutely.
And then in the documentary made it seem like they had it all on one computer, and that computer crashed, and they had to start from scratch. And, and then they had this.
Well, the internet wasn't really available to them until 94.
Right.
When they were that's when they started putting this program online.
But the idea that they'd been storing all of this important information on one computer, and then that computer crashed. I mean, they still had all the written.
You know how many floppies that would take to store that shit, Lauren?
Right.
Thank God. A floppy tower.
Yeah. And so they acquired a new computer system, and I guess they had gone back through and taken all the paper documents that they had from all of the crime scenes, and they had a task force of people in an office just stowing away all of this stuff into the computers, re-entering it. And then they used this new system of cataloging, and one name that kept coming forward in their new fancy computer system was Gary Ridgway. Now, a big problem for Gary was that he had been seen with two of missing persons.
Right.
He was the last person seen with Kelly McGinnis in his pickup truck, and he was also the last person seen with Marie Malvar. At least his truck was the last thing seen.
Right.
Driving away from the scene, and they had questioned him on it and everything, but they start, because the computer system spits this out, and they start really like going back through and going, okay, this guy just seems to be.
Some investigators.
He seems to be the last person with some of these girls that come up missing. A lot of times, the prostitutes that are working the strip are saying that these girls are getting picked up in a green pickup with a fucking camper shell that looks a lot like Gary's truck.
Yeah. I think Reichard was convinced at this time.
Oh,
the
no
lead
doubt.
detective. I think he was convinced. He was like, "This is our guy. I just gotta fucking get something.
I gotta
on
prove
him."
it." Yeah. So they get a search warrant of his house, and on April 8th of 1987, they search his home and vehicles. They don't find anything. He did keep some keepsake stuff from victims, and we would later find out during interviews that he was even toying with coworkers. He would take.
Yeah, well, he would leave the jewelry in the bathrooms.
He would leave jewelry like strewed about the factory at Kenworth, like just randomly placed.
Yeah.
Women's jewelry and stuff, which is just eerie to think.
Right.
He strangled these women and threw their bodies in the river, and he was taking their jewelry and like placing them at work, because some of his coworkers, there's a lot of talk in the media about the Green River Killer and this and that, and some of his coworkers knew that he'd been questioned in the past.
You know what?
And there was something off about him. They all said like, he was a nice guy at work, but not the type of guy you would hang out with outside of work.
Right.
And some of his coworkers actually called him Green River Gary.
That's freaking hilarious.
Right.
But you know why I think he did this shit? I think what he got out of it was, like the old saying, misery loves company. I think he felt like if he took these mementos or whatever and hid them around and then people wore them, he knew, hey, you're wearing that bracelet. You stole that. You're just as low as me.
Maybe.
You're scum of the earth. And it made him feel more comfortable in a place where he spends the majority of his time.
Yeah. That's a decent theory.
I think it's a damn good theory.
Maybe we can write to him and ask.
I don't care that much. Plus, I don't want him to be like. No,
after the searches of his house and vehicles came up empty, they should have checked work and found some jewelry there. But in his house and his cars, he was smart enough to not have anything of the victims there, and no evidence. Ridgeway would end up taking a polygraph test and pass. And we mentioned earlier that he basically said that he passed just by relaxing. However, during this initial polygraph test, they didn't ask him about Marie Malvar. I don't know how. But
how do you not ask him
right,
about
it's a big fucking thing.
one of the main connections you have?
It's like your truck was seen driving away with a woman who is now missing.
Yeah. But then again, wouldn't he have just lied about that, Lauren? I mean, this guy did not care. He was disconnected.
But at least he'd be strapped to a lie detector test, and maybe it would be able to record,
you
the
don't
needle
think
jump or something.
You don't think they asked him a ton of shit like that?
Well, according to records, he wasn't asked about Marie Malvar. He was asked about,
stuff like that.
Soliciting prostitution and whether, he was responsible for the bodies missing, blah, blah, blah. But however he was able to do it. We've talked about two polygraphs. We've talked about the taxi driver was this Melvin Foster. And how he failed and he was not responsible for these killings. And now we're talking about Gary Ridgway, who we know is responsible for these killings, and he passes. So... We know polygraphs, they're variable.
Maybe Melvin Foster has hypnotized Gary Ridgway to carry out his evil plan.
I find that highly unlikely.
Holy shit, I think I just figured it out.
He solved it.
That's why Gary passed the test, because he has nothing on his conscience because he's still hypnotized, Lauren.
From Melvin Foster?
Yes.
The voodoo taxi driver?
The fucking taxi driver's behind all this.
At the dice that was hanging behind his rearview mirror, he spun it while Gary was in the backseat.
And then,
you're a killer of women.
You're a killer of women. Mostly prostitutes.
Then why did Melvin fail the thing in fucking...
Because he's guilty of it. He knows what's going on. That's why Melvin failed and Gary didn't.
Okay.
You feeling me on this theory?
I don't know, man.
Okay.
You got me way off track.
All right. Whatever.
They would end up taking bodily samples from Ridgeway. They would
which they couldn't use at the time.
They took a cotton swab and made him put it in his mouth. And,
They preserved that shit well.
Thankfully, because without that, they got nothing. Without that, Ridgeway's still walking around today free.
It's amazing how they kept that evidence for that long.
Right. Well, they didn't have the DNA technology yet to be able to link that to any of the victims.
Right.
And so they would have insufficient evidence as well to arrest him for any of the murders. And so he's out walking the streets again, and more bodies of missing young women were discovered in the year that followed, some of which included that of a missing runaway Debbie Gonzalez, who was 14, and Deborah Estes, who was 15. They had disappeared 6 years earlier. So like we talked about, they're uncovering bodies that have been dead for years now at this point. A lot of people tend to believe that Gary did the majority of his, it's pretty much assumed that Gary did the majority of his killing from 1982, 1983, and by the end of 1984, he was mostly done.
Right.
They believe he killed
There might
two
have
more
been a couple
people.
stragglers in there.
They believe he killed 2 more people later
Right.
on. We'll talk a little bit about that. But as far as his cluster killing and the majority of it, there's a lot of rumors we'll get into later as well about him going down to San Diego, maybe killing up in Portland and this and that.
Well, when you get older, you lose a little bit of that drive.
Yeah, and like I said, although there were still bodies being discovered, there were no recent killings attributed to the Green River Killer in the Seattle region during the late 1980s. Now, he talked about the woman that he had met at the country bar, Judith. He would end up marrying her in 1988. This would become his 3rd wife. And Judith, you gotta love her. She's done a lot of interviews since. She's very oblivious. Or maybe he just wasn't killing during this time and he just cleaned up his act.
I heard he was a saint to her.
Yeah,
for a long
pretty
time.
much. Yeah, we have some quotes from her that we'll get into.
But these quotes were from later when she found out who he really was, right?
Right. Now, in 1991, the task force would be reduced down yet again. It would be disbanded and reduced just to one investigator named Tom Jensen. This is because we talked about
There's pressure.
Dave Reichard. I believe he'd become sheriff by now. He's moved on to bigger things.
Right. And plus, there's a lot of pressure from the community here to move on.
Right. Because they're like we said, there's not people disappearing at the rate that there were before. They're still finding they're finding bodies of victims that have been missing from years past. But
all the victims are at this point are mostly just prostitutes too, and they're seeing those patterns. They're like, hey, look, they live this high risk lifestyle. They're still here. Let's move on and focus on other things that are going on in our community.
Well, it had been 9 years, roughly 49 victims, and $15 million that this task force had been investigating and used all that money and still had not caught the Green River Killer. So to an extent, you can understand, like, you haven't found the guy. It doesn't seem like he's killing anymore.
Right.
Let's move on. And 10 years would pass. 10 years kind of just go by here from 91 until 2001. And the technology would finally provide the answer. In April 2001, almost 20 years after the first known Green River murder, Detective Reichard, who had become the sheriff of King County, began renewed investigations into the murder. So he's still not letting this thing go. This was a big part of his career. A big part of his career. This is like the big. This is something he still talks about in interviews. You see him. He's done any study of the Green River case. You'll see Bundy. Dave Reichard's face, and he's talking about investigating this stuff.
Of course,
he uncovered most of these bodies. He was there for almost all of the bodies being found. He really wanted to. He said he really wanted to deliver answers to the families of these girls, because he did look at it as, these women had families, these girls and women had families.
Absolutely, they did.
And he wanted to deliver answers, and he felt that he didn't do so, and he still was not letting it go 20 years later. He felt that technology had advanced enough to where it was time to reopen some things. Evidence was re-examined, and some of the forensic samples were sent to labs. The first samples to be sent to the lab were found with 3 victims that were murdered between 1982 and 1983. Those were the first ones that we started talking about: Opal Mills, Marcia Chapman, and Carol Christensen. Mm-hmm. The samples they consisted of semen supposedly taken from the killer. The semen samples underwent a newly developed DNA testing method and were compared with samples taken from suspects that they had on file.
Right.
And here we go. On September 10th, 2001.
Wow, the day before that important day, man.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I know, that is so weird. The next day was September 11th.
He's some kind of Gary Ridgeway activist, man.
Right. Sheriff Dave Reichard received the news. He was delivered an envelope, and inside the envelope was the killer's name. Basically, the person came to him. The police officer came to Reichard and said,
Reichard was just glowing at this moment in his career. Like in the documentary, he's like, "You don't even have to open it.
Yeah,
I already know."
Yeah, so the person came to him and said, "Look,
Melvin Foster."
Sir?
No.
No. So
20 years down the drain.
Right. So this person comes to him and says, look, we've got, we took the 3 samples of semen from the 3 victims. We compared them, and we found a match to one person who was a suspect that you had many years ago, and we've got the person's name inside this envelope. And Reichert said, you don't have to tell me. I know who it is.
And he said, Steve Harvey, get in here and read it. No.
Melvin Foster. Wait,
God
wait,
damn
wait,
it.
wait.
Nope,
Hold
he's
on.
the runner-up. Sorry.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Apparently the winner is Gary Ridgeway.
Oh, awkward.
Yeah, Dave Reichert apparently knew it was Gary all along, but he didn't have the evidence to prove it.
Yeah.
And he knew that Gary Ridgeway was walking for all these years a free man. On November 30th, 2001, Ridgeway was arrested, leaving his workplace. Now, you may think it's weird that September 10th was when Dave found out that it was Gary Ridgeway, and then he wasn't able to arrest him until November 30th. This is one thing he talked about in the book. He's like, you know, people think that we can just run out and arrest them right away, but they have to get a lot of ducks in a row,
Right.
get everything squared away to where they can arrest him and there's no hiccups, because then lawyers get involved right away and everything.
Right.
And so they had to but they did put him under surveillance immediately to make sure that he wasn't out killing during the time once they found out it was
leave
him.
the area.
Right. And so they did surround him as he's leaving his workplace and arrest him. It was kind of funny in the book. They talked about the first things they went up and said, "You're under arrest for the murder of 4 women or whatever." And
he was like, "Okay."
He was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
That sounds like me.
right,
It sounds like something I do.
yeah." And so on December 5th, 2001, Ridgeway was formally charged with the deaths of 4 women. Neighbors and family members were shocked. There was one neighbor that lived behind him and saw his face on the news. He's like, "I know that guy."
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Wait a second. Oh,
He
that's the
loaned
guy
me a
that
respirator."
That's the guy that lived behind us." And family members stood behind him. And Ridgeway, after consulting with his attorney after initially being charged with these murders, tried to basically plead his innocence and said that it wasn't him. He said, one thing his attorney and Gary were, after the consulting, they kind of tried to play the whole thing. Well, it's like, well, yeah, you found my semen inside of a prostitute.
Yeah, that's where I put it.
Right. She was a sex worker, and you found my semen in her. That doesn't necessarily mean I killed her.
Right. Just because she was dead.
Right.
When you found it.
But the more they started to think about it, and one thing that convinced Gary to finally just go ahead and come clean and plead guilty to these was his brother. Convinced him to plead guilty because his brother didn't want him to receive the death penalty. And Gary would end up deciding to do a plea deal with the police. And on November 5th, 2003, he would avoid the death penalty by confessing to the murder of 48 women. How about going the full way, though? He went from the 4 to...
Yeah, but he's still holding out on us, don't you think? He's definitely holding out on us.
No, he wants to be known as the best. He heard him in interviews where he was almost toting the fact that he was one of the...
So you think
he is the most prolific...
You think the only reason he wasn't convicted of the 70 to 80 that people suspect is because he just couldn't remember?
Yeah.
He just couldn't remember.
Oh, no
where
doubt.
They were.
No doubt.
Wow.
On December 18th, he was sentenced to 48 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Did you see the hearing where he confessed to the 48, where the judge sat up there and said, how do you plead to this? And he just railed off each one of them, and then he just guilty. And then did you see the
also guilty?
Did you see where the court gave the microphone to the family members?
That's where I realized how many families were really affected.
Insane,
when you look at that courtroom, in that documentary, it's just like people it's just full. People just coming up one after another.
Yeah, one angry family member after a next,
telling them how they feel,
telling him that he should burn in hell, and that you're the worst person. You're seed of evil, and except they're the one bearded old Amish looking guy that
with the rainbow suspenders.
Yeah. And that
told him he forgave him.
Interesting moment for sure. During the court, he was the one family member that came up and grabbed the microphone and said, "I'm not here to judge you. You've made it hard for me to believe in my faith, but I have to do this and say that I forgive you." And Gary actually cracked. He sat there stone faced after family member after family member came up and threw verbal just fire at him.
Yeah.
And then, the one guy that came up and said that he forgave him, he cracked and actually almost shed a tear for a second there.
What do you think about that? about that? You think that's honorable?
I
Or
think
you
it is
that
honorable.
Guy's just being naive.
I think it's honorable. I don't think I could do it, but I think it's
think you could
honorable.
do
If
it.
he killed my daughter, I don't think I could be that big as to do something like that. But at the same time, like, what does going up there and having anger towards him accomplish? It doesn't bring your daughter back.
Yeah, you think it just hurts you more if you don't forgive? I know that's so cliche, but
I do. I mean, if it's what's done is done, and if you can lift the weight from your shoulders and forgive, I think it does go a long ways to helping you move forward.
yeah, I think that's one of the things that the Bible does get right. I think it's like it says, "Forgive 70 times 7 times." It's a lot of damn times. 490 times.
It's a lot of damn times.
490 times.
We got some interesting facts just from his spree of killing. He'd been leaving. We talked about how he'd been leaving the victims' jewelry around the factory and how his coworkers been calling him Green River Gary. He'd also been selling victims' jewelry at yard sales. Talked about him being frugal. So
Him and his third wife did that, right?
Yeah.
Like they started out like renting booths at flea markets, and they realized like, wait a minute, we can just set up in our yard and make way more money, and not pay rent.
I was doing some studying, and my wife happened to be like sitting next to me as I was watching this, and she heard this part about like him selling victims' jewelry and stuff at yard sales, and she's like, "What did the current wife? Where did she think that he got this stuff?" And I'm like, "Well, he did have 2 previous wives, so she could have easily just thought that it was his ex-wife's stuff." Yeah. Some quotes from his third wife, Judith, and we talked about how oblivious she was to the whole thing and really thought he was just a saint. She said, he made me smile every day. I had the perfect husband, the perfect life, and at this moment she placed her hands over her face. He was the perfect killer. Wow. Another quote.
It's kind of poetic.
It is.
Yeah, if you can appreciate that.
That's a lot of perfects, though, for this guy who was really...
Yeah, she needs a thesaurus, don't get me wrong.
Had she met him?
But it's pretty cool.
Because after hearing him talk in so many interviews, it's just like... There's not a lot there's just not a lot to this guy.
Well, no, I mean, maybe she was just... Well, you don't know how it was for her.
No.
You know, for me,
it's just, you know, I knew who he would be. He came home.
Right.
I made him sandwiches. He ate them. We went garage sailing.
He would squint at the TV for a few hours.
Yeah.
Pretend like he's reading.
Yeah, we had sex 4 times a day.
Minimum.
It was scheduled. Right after his sandwich.
He had alarms on his beeper.
Yeah. Another quote. I found out he had the carpets removed because he'd killed women on them and there were blood stains. Also, she said...
what did he tell her? You know, that's something that I never found. Like, what was his excuse? Surprise, honey, new carpet.
Yeah, putting a new carpet.
Oh, you're such a sweetheart, Gary. Yeah. You know I love shag rugs.
Oh, God, shag. She also said he got rid of the bed because he'd had sex with some of his victims there, then killed them.
Again, why'd you just randomly get rid of our bed, Gary?
Right?
Like, that's just...
It's time for a new one.
Red flags. This lady was in denial.
Maybe he wanted a new Casper mattress.
Oh, maybe. Free advertisement.
That's our good faith for you, Casper.
That's our good faith.
In interviews with police after his arrest, he described how he lured and killed his victims. Now, we got a lot of insight during these interviews as to how he pulled it off. We've already talked about a lot of it, how he would, pull over and act like his truck was broken down and all that stuff. We got some quotes straight from the killer's mouth. I killed some of them outside. I remember leaving each woman's body in a place where she was found. I killed most of them in my house near Military Road, and I killed a lot of them in my truck not far from where I picked them up. We learned later that most of the victims were killed at his house. I didn't know this until like far into my research.
Right.
I assumed he was killing them in his truck.
Well, because they don't have...
Because he was so impulsive. He really was.
Well, they didn't find none of this shit out until he told them. Though,
right.
So that's why it falls so late in the story.
And he did kill some in his truck. And he did kill some in the woods.
Right.
But most of them he would take back to his house. Like Marie Malvar, for instance.
Yeah.
The pimp saw him driving away, that he was driving to his house. And once in his house, on his bed, they would have sex. And then after the sex was complete, he would choke them from behind.
Now, did you hear the story about his coworker that he would occasionally drive home?
No.
Yeah. So, like, they would go drinking together or whatever. And I think she eventually joined the, Parents Without Partners club that he was in. And it started to become more of a regular thing. Like, they'd have a few drinks there or whatever, and then he would drive her home.
Yeah.
Well, one night, he's like, do you mind if we stop by my house first?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, it takes her back to his house, right? So she don't think nothing of it. She's already, she knows him for a few weeks now, and he's been giving her rides home and whatnot. So she's sitting there, she's drinking a beer, and he brings up the Green River Killer.
Oh.
And he's like, well, what do you think about this guy? Like, what do you think he's doing? Do you think he's doing good for the community? And she said she just, like, these red flags just started going up. like all over, and she just thought my best interest would be just to agree with everything he's saying right now.
Right.
This was in the book, the Ann Rule book, and yeah, so she just agrees with everything.
Call.
She's
Play
like,
to
yeah,
the ego. Play to the ego.
He's cleaning the streets, and then he goes on to be like, "You were never a prostitute, were you?" And she's like, "No."
God,
and he's
no,
like,
they're disgusting.
He's like,
she's like, just
and then
goes
he's like,
beyond.
Would you ever be? And she's like, "No, never."
And he just looked down and he goes, "Good answer.
Good answer.
Let's go.
Now
I'll take
I don't
you
have
home.
to kill you."
I'll take you home."
That's creepy, man.
It is, man.
And she later found out that he killed many women like that.
Yeah.
That same scenario.
Well, to play what you were just talking about, we have another quote from him. It said, "I picked prostitutes as my victims because I hate most prostitutes and I did not want to pay for the sex. I also picked prostitutes as victims because they were easy to pick up without being noticed. I knew they would be not be reported missing right away, or might not ever be reported missing. I picked prostitutes because I thought that I could kill as many of them as I wanted without getting caught."
Yeah, he was just blatant with a lot of answers, except for why.
Blatant. Once he beat around the bush for 10 minutes. His interviews are frustrating to watch and listen to because, as we mentioned, he's not the brightest dude. And I think as he got older, he lost even more of his
I got the
ability
sense
to speak in a sense. Like maybe he was doing more killing than talking because he just
right.
He
was always a quiet guy.
Yeah,
but I think I got the sense from him that he did not understand why we did not understand him. Mm-hmm. As when I say we, as in quote unquote normal people, whatever you want to say.
Like y'all don't go
people
out and
who
kill
aren't
girls.
serial killers.
Y'all don't kill.
Yeah, like why do you
prostitutes?
not understand what I'm doing here? Like I'm doing a justice, and I killed them because I want my money, and I don't want to pay for it.
It's that simple.
Sex. Yeah, it's like what do you not understand here?
Right.
And I think a lot of the cops were like, we just didn't get a reason. I'm like, I think you did get a reason.
You pretty much.
I think
did.
you just don't accept it because you're a rationally thinking normal human being.
What he's saying in this quote here, with I didn't think they would be reported missing, and I thought I could get away with it.
Right.
Is like if he could go into a store and take merchandise without getting caught, he would do it. But there's repercussions to that. He's going to go in the store. He's going to steal the merchandise. They're going to have, they're going to report it to the police. Give his description. He's going to be caught. He can't. He's a cheap ass. He wants.
Yeah.
I think probably you would think some of him he had to get off on killing these women, but at the same time, it was really as simple as he thought he could get away with it and get his money back and get sexual satisfaction, and that was it.
Yep.
And he just was not a deep thinking guy.
That's what I'm saying. Like that was the answer.
Yeah, he was not a deep thinking guy. You can hear it when he talks. He's not.
No, he's on the surface.
He was impulsive. These girls didn't mean anything to him. They were just what got him satisfied in that moment, and then that was it. He was done with them. Yeah. And when he was done with them, he killed them. And he would kill them, like we mentioned. He would have sex on his bed.
Right.
And as he completed sex, he would strangle them from behind. And he would immediately, before he would even leave the house, he would have the sheets thrown into the washer.
Yep.
And he would wrap them in some sort of carpet or plastic and take their bodies to the river. And it's amazing that he got away with this for as long as he did, killing at least 49 women for sure, because he would later be, in the 2000s, he would be convicted again of another victim. And his official number stands at 49, but it is believed that he killed somewhere in the 70s.
Yeah.
And he admits that he killed in the 70s.
Yeah, Reichert himself has been quoted saying that multiple times. Like he believes it's closer 70 to 80.
Yeah,
victims.
and it's amazing that he was able so often to kill him at his house and then drive with the body in his car when the police knew there was a serial killer on the loose.
Right.
And a lot of times these women were being picked up in a pickup truck, and he's just willy-nilly driving with these bodies in his vehicle and taking them to the river where you think they would have some... You'd think they'd be patrolling the river bit. I get it. It's a long, winding river. It goes a long way.
But I'm sure he wasn't going way out of his way to dump these bodies.
Right.
It wasn't like John Wayne Gacy.
You'd just think that he would have been caught with one of the bodies at some point, but he didn't. And a lot of time, pretty much every serial killer has strings of luck involved in their killing sprees.
Right. And he also lived in a neighborhood, dude.
Right.
You can't really dismiss that. Like he lived in a neighborhood. I'm actually looking at a picture of his house right now, and he didn't have a whole lot of like huge trees like blocking where he lived or nothing like that. It's just
so he's taking that's a good point.
He's
taking these bodies out in either carpet or in plastic
Right.
to his pickup truck, and is he just throwing it in the bed of his truck?
He has to be. You're not gonna put it in the cab, are you?
Well, he did have a camper shell. They said
Just have a rug sit up like a human, and the thing just banging against the window.
he did have a camper shell though. They said so maybe that helped.
Yeah, but they're still seeing him carry it out.
Right.
You know? I mean, having a camper shell or not, you're not going to be able to see what's in the truck bed unless you walk up and look in it. So, I don't know. I'm just amazed. I guess people just had so much faith in him. He was such a good neighbor.
Yeah.
So
Well, we talked earlier about the spree being believed to have ended in 1984, as far as like his brashes of killing women. The two that were on record that he killed after 1984 were in 1990, April 13th, 1990. Marta Reeves. She was discovered on September 20th, 1990, and he was later convicted of her killing. And then also on 1998, so an 8-year span between that, Patricia Yellow Robe was killed as well, and she was discovered August 6, 1998. So he didn't stop killing after 1984. He did get convicted of those two. And there's a lot of speculation that he never stopped.
Okay.
And it's hard to believe that he could go on that kind of a spree and then just
stop.
Stop.
That's what I was just about
from
to say.
1984 to 1990, and then stop from 1990 to 1998. I don't believe it.
No. I feel like they kind of were like, okay, we got enough. We got him. We got enough.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like almost 50 murders. I think that's enough.
Many believe that he went down to San Diego between 1985 and 1991. More than 40 women, many prostitutes were found dead. Some of the cases remained unsolved down in San Diego.
Were the bodies found in clusters out there as well?
I'm not sure.
Okay. See, that would be... But San Diego in the... What year span did you say again?
85 to 91.
Who was operating then? Ramirez? He was still operating, wasn't he? In 85?
Richard Ramirez?
Yeah.
Mainly in Los Angeles, though. San Diego's quite a bit south of there.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
That'd be a long way, though, from Washington State all the way down to San Diego. San Diego's damn near.
Well, this man wasn't afraid to put some miles on a truck, bro. He was not afraid for that.
That's true. And if he was trying to stay clear of the law, there's task force all over his area.
Yeah.
That's a long way to go, man. He could have gone.
Where?
Portland, we talked about. Could have gone to Portland. That's another spot that people speculate he may have been killing as well.
Going to old Portlandia.
Yeah. Yeah, and he would get his final murder conviction on December 21st, 2010, when the body of Rebecca Marrero, the remains of her body were found in Auburn Ravine.
I think they found her skull initially.
Yeah.
They mainly found the rest of it.
The site was roughly 3 miles from Mountain View Cemetery, where Ridgeway disposed of a number of his victims. And he would plead guilty to this, making his 49th murder conviction, which stands as the most on record, making him the most prolific American serial killer to this day. Before his confession, authorities had attributed 49 murders to the killer, and he had confessed to at least 71. And he is currently imprisoned at Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla, Washington. He's 68 years old, still living.
Looks like a gym.
Yeah, no, he looks like an old ball sack.
Oh, well, there's that.
And he can barely hold a sentence. Apparently, you don't have to be all that smart or a wordsmith to strangle women.
Well, why would you need to be a wordsmith to strangle women?
I don't know. I'm just
Ted Bundy?
For sure you don't, because he's not, and he did.
Okay. So it's not bad if you are. You just don't have to be.
Right.
So you can still achieve your dreams out there.
Yeah. Well, that's Gary Ridgeway. You got any last thoughts or words on him? I mean, I think we crammed a shitload of information into an hour and a half. I hope you guys were able to follow it. I hope we portrayed it in a manner that
feel like Ridgeway
makes sense and was entertaining at the same time, and we got most of the facts correct. At least we're not saying all of them.
No.
I'm sure we got mixed up because we've got pages and pages in front of us of just information, and some of it's going to get jumbled up.
Lauren, you did a hell of a job on this outline.
I did
putting this shit together.
I sure put a lot of time into it. That's for sure. This is the most effort I've put into an episode in a while.
Well, we jam-packed a lot of shit into, what are we at?
An hour and a half.
Hour and a half?
Yeah.
Most podcasts did at least 2 or 3 parters. Not saying that they shouldn't have.
Right.
They're fucking amazing. But, hey, it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun, though.
Ridgeway.
But I think Ridgeway was like like one of those oblivious cartoon characters just walking through life and getting away with things. Things just kept going
like
his
Mr.
way.
Magoo?
Yeah, like Mr. Magoo, like nothing bad could happen to him.
Right.
Just strolling through life, taking out bodies, throwing them in his truck.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave. How you doing, Gary?
Yeah.
Taking out the trash again, huh?
Yeah.
It's oddly body-shaped.
These ones, man, sometimes it gets wearing doing serial killer cases like this, especially where there's this many, because the victims get lost in it. We like to bring, in the past, we've done a good job, I think, of like making it known that the victims are at the forefront here, and not like glorifying the killer. But with a serial killer like Gary Ridgeway, where he potentially had in the 70s of victims and at least had 49 on record, it's hard to I don't know what I'm trying to say here. It's hard to give like our solace to the victims of that many women, where they become names and statistics. Whereas like when we did a case like Annie Lee, where we focus on the victim, or Kitty Genovese, yeah.
Like,
it's like each of these women. I was about to say each of these prostitutes. They were women. They had lives. They had families. They had lives ahead of them. They weren't going to be. Most likely, they were not going to be prostitutes for the rest of their life. It was probably just a small rut that they fell in.
Yeah.
Maybe they got in with the wrong people, or they were doing it for financial reasons, just to get over a hump and then get on track, or they were looking for another job. Who knows? But they were people. They had families, and it's what Gary Ridgway did was completely just disgusting. He just went around taking their lives as if they were trash and throwing them into rivers. So I mean, if we portrayed it in a light that we were like in any way Ridgwaying this, and that they didn't get their just deserve as human beings and real victims of crimes, then that's not what we were going for. But
God damn, that's a good monologue, Lauren. That's really good. That's really good.
Post-log?
That's good. I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked it. It's very sincere. I wish.
Trying to be.
I'd have thought of that. It's exactly how I feel, though.
No, I mean, because we make jokes through the whole thing, but...
That's why I like the single cases so much, because you can give everybody their just due,
right.
their acknowledgement in a case where it's just one case.
Right.
But these serial killer ones are fun too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shit out there. There's a lot of different avenues you can take. A lot of theories that people have come up with, like mine, that Melvin Foster's the actual killer. But hey, take it or leave it.
Like in a Ridgeway case, there was so many victims, we didn't even name them all. Like there was women that were killed by him, and we didn't even bring their name up in this episode. And we don't have time to go through all of them. We don't have time to go through the details of all the killings.
The Ann Rule book, Green River Running Red. If you want to know every single victim, and as much information as possibly accessible, out there, she got it. She got it.
No, she's badass. For sure.
And it's written. It took me a second to realize that she writes it like a little bit focused on the victims and the investigation, and then she'll like backtrack all the way to when Gary was a kid, and then she won't like introduce Gary, so she's just kind of like talking about his childhood, and then like, oh, this John was this and that was that, as it goes up and through his marriage and things like that, and then all of a sudden it'll go back to the investigation.
Right.
It'll jump to the future. So once you realize that, it's a little easier to digest, but it is a shit ton of information.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, I didn't read that one, but I do remember Small Sacrifices when we did the episode on that case, and that was definitely an extensive book, and I loved her writing style. And
yeah.
I
mean, she's very thorough. If you guys are into that, or if you're doing if you're doing like a paper or a report on this, on the Green River Killer, must read book.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's the Green River Killer.
Are we done with the business?
We're done with all that bullshit now. Let's do some shout outs for our faithful patrons.
Up to 110 patrons.
That's amazing. So all the new patrons since the
last...
never
thought we'd be here.
I'd like to thank my mother.
I'd like to thank my mom
for not washing my genitals excessively. And turning me into a creep.
I don't know if she'd turn you into a creep, but go ahead.
I am a creep. But it didn't have anything to do with my genitals being washed too much.
Yeah, that's what you said.
I think she only washed them the right amount when I was a kid.
Yeah, you think so? There's a good amount that your genitals need to be washed.
Okay, good. So go ahead and give some shout-outs to the new patrons. Everybody that jumped aboard since... joined board. We've had a few drinks, guys. First, we drank a couple of warm PBRs.
Everybody that's come aboard,
happy 4th of July to all of the American listeners. All the American patrons. Yeah. And if you celebrate it and you live in another country for some reason, the independence of our country, I don't know why you would, but...
If you're an American,
if you just like fireworks...
out of the country, Lauren, some people move from here.
Okay. If you live in another country and you used to be American or you love America and you just like fireworks, happy 4th of July. We're drinking PBR still. It's warm because it was on my patio from 4th of July. And then we had a shot of Jameson as well, so that's why we're a little bit
I think I'm fine. I don't know about you.
Okay.
But I think everybody enjoys fireworks.
Yeah.
If you let me fucking talk every once in a while.
Right.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus
Christ. Like, for me, I never got to talk on here.
All right. Talk. Do some patron shout-outs. Everybody that joined board.
You said join board again.
Fuck my life.
All right, here we go. Joshua B. J-Train.
J-Train,
you're getting a special shout-out.
Trucker from Arizona, fucking bull riding extraordinaire, badass, hilarious guy. He's constantly Instagramming about us and, like, sending us fucking...
Dude, the trucker community is strong.
Feedback. Yeah, and he's on the CB radio fucking talking us up.
That's right. Breaker, True Crime Guys on episode
Breaker
20.
19.
That's right.
Karen to
dude.
Kane, listen to True Crime Guys.
Roger that.
Yeah, no, he says he listens to our show to like calm him down before he rides bulls. So that is badass.
Oh, that's
And
pretty
he's
cool.
he's actually gives us more money per month than any other patron. So big shout out to J Train. $20
Yeah.
a month he's donating to our show.
Damn. Usually we don't give that stuff away,
Pretty awesome.
but he's been pretty amazing.
Yeah, we owe you, J Train.
All right, so here's a few other new ones. Melissa S., a very special lady. Jerry W., donated here in town.
Oh, really? Local
Yes,
Vegas person.
That's right. Yeah,
Sweet.
I have a special connection with her. She's my mother-in-law.
Okay, you're trying to play it coy over there.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Thank you so much for listening. Let's see, who else we got? We got Patty S., Stephanie R., Tracy B., Andrew B., Hope P., Maria P., Eric J., or possibly Eric Storm. Don't know. I don't think Storm's your last name, so I'm going to go with Eric J., Amber L., and Sarah M. Let's see. That's all of the $10 and $5 donors. We got quite a few new $2 ones. You wanna shout out some of these?
Yeah, give it to me.
Right here.
Give it to me. All right, we got Michelle K, Shannon M, Corey M, Jordan B, Elizabeth B, Justin K, Michael Vanden B. I'm just kidding. That kind of blows your cover a little bit. Kelly W, Tammy J. Oh, you know what? We've already shouted out Kelly W.
Have we? Her date must have changed. That's okay.
You got like 3
You get
now.
2.
Lee D,
Lady.
Sully Y, Leanne A, Brooke A, Amber K, Holly M,
You're doing a great job, by the way.
Kim S,
Yeah, I'm loving this. Are we at Charlie McDennis yet?
Craven C, Charlie McDennis.
Yes.
Dude, sunny in
That's a great name.
Philadelphia. Did we not have Frank Reynolds too? We do. He's down here.
Yeah.
Did we already shout Frank Reynolds out? Is that a real person?
I don't know. We may have.
Dude, someone signed up as Frank Reynolds and he actually put the picture.
Well, if not, Frank Reynolds.
of Danny DeVito.
That's
I feel like someone's trolling us, dude. But I love it. I don't care.
okay.
Tara M, Connor M, Belky G, Abby H, Natalie O, and Adam S.
Nice.
Thank you all. I'm sorry if that got like just
Well, it was clunky as
redundant
hell.
after a while.
Well, no, it's not redundant. Everyone deserves a shout, man. Everyone deserves recognition for making this podcast possible, you know?
Yeah, but I think we should start reading their whole names because it's not like somebody's gonna hear this patron episode and then like steal your identity because they read your last name.
Okay. Y'all rein in on that shit.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys are cool with it, and if you become a new patron and you want to shoot us a message and say, hey, you can read my whole name, that's cool. I guess there's probably some people that wouldn't be a big fan of you saying their whole name.
Maybe not. Well, you can edit it, though, on Patreon. You can put what we see and what we don't see.
Yeah. When you sign up for Patreon, put the name you want read because that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
If you want Charlie McDennis, put that on there.
Charlie McDennis.
We used to do, in middle school, we used to there was a library giveaway things. They would have like drawings and we would go in there and submit stupid names. Like one of them was Harry Balzania.
Yeah.
And they actually read it like over the intercom and it was like the greatest day of my life. Harry Balzonia.
I had a buddy I worked with back home used to do that in restaurants, like fast food places. They'd ask for a name and he'd give like a famous musician. He'd be like, yeah, I thought Mick Jagger.
Yeah.
And then they'd be like, Mick Jagger, number 49.
Everybody's looking around.
Yeah, everybody's like, what? You're like, yeah, it's
He actually was on the waiting list?
Steven Tyler. Yeah, Steven Tyler.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
Frank Reynolds. Yes. Table for 3.
Table for 3.
Thank you guys for tuning in. We've obviously ran out of steam, so we will see you guys next week for a normal episode. Keep creeping.
Keep creeping. What's up, creepers? If you enjoyed that little peek into the Patreon world, like I said earlier before the episode, there is more where that came from. Patreon.com/truecrimeguys, and we are putting up new premium episodes every month. $2 a month will get you access to those episodes. Plus, Higher Thoughts, which is an episode that I do on a weekly basis. I release it somewhere around Saturday and Sunday. Usually 20 to 30 minutes. I just come on there, I answer listener questions, or just talk about whatever comes to mind. It's a good time. But you guys can find us on social media. True Crime Guys on Twitter, True Crime Guys at True Crime Guys on Instagram, True Crime Guys on Facebook. You can message us on there if you have any comments about the show, questions, whatever. And like we said, truecrimeguys.com. Everything is on there. If you want to buy some stickers, donate for some stickers, you can do that with truecrimeguys.com. Truecrimeguys.com. Click the sticker link, and we'll get some out to you. Make sure that we have your address if it doesn't come through with PayPal and all that shit. And real quick, we got to give a little shout to our girl Wendy at Oh My Gaia. If you don't know what Oh My Gaia is an innovative and all-natural deodorant, fragrance, and beard oil company specializing in paraben and aluminum-free products. Their innovative line of deodorants inhibit the growth of odor-causing bacteria while maintaining effectiveness. At Oh My Gaia, they use only all-natural paraben and aluminum-free organic ingredients. Guys, there's tons of scents to choose from. Vanilla, cherry almond, sandalwood, lavender, lemongrass, Egyptian musk, coconut, dreamsicle, leather, lumberjack, honeysuckle, fireside. There is something for you, I promise. Stop putting aluminum in your armpits, and you can smell better and feel better about it as well. And, almost forgot, most importantly, we have our own scent, True Crime Pine. True Crime Pine. It has our old school logo on it with the mug shots. And if you use the code CREEPER, CREEPER, you can get 15% off at shop_ohmygaia on Instagram or ohmygaia.com. OHMYGAIA.com. Try it, guys. You won't regret it. Also, want to give my wife's store a shout. Mojave High Creations on Instagram. Mojave High Creations. If you can't find it for whatever reason, hit us up on True Crime Guys on Instagram. I'll send you a link personally. She makes custom handmade clothing that is crocheted, women's tops, beanies, bottoms, scarves, gloves. If you want something custom, something that's made where someone actually cared about how the product came out and actually took some time and is made it out of, biodegradable products as well. This is like, anybody can get brands nowadays. Everybody's putting out brands, and the brands are just getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and tanking. Eventually, I feel that we're going to get back to buying things from each other. There's going to be people creating things, people trading goods, and people making a way that way in their life and taking their lives back through businesses like this. But if you would, give her a follow on Instagram at Mojave High Creations, or you can check out her Etsy page at etsy.com/Mojave High Creations on there, guys. And if you can use code CREEPER on there as well for 15% off if you guys make a purchase on there. And if you have any kind of comments, or maybe you see something that you like but you'd like it in a different color, hey, hit her up. All right, she's sweet, I promise. All right, guys. That's it. As always, thank you for listening. If this is your first episode of True Crime Guys, this is not a typical episode. Usually it's myself and Lauren the entire time. And, we release on a weekly basis. We take 1 week a month and we release a Patreon episode. And then another week a month, we will be releasing one of these old Patreon episodes. And you get 2 new free episodes a month if you're new. All right? So that's how we do it. Welcome to the family. Keep creeping, guys, and we'll see y'all next time.
True Crime Guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder, get murder, get murder. True Crime Guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder charming.